What is the most messed up bombshell someone has dropped into a casual conversation with you? One year at the cottage, we met a family who was renting a cottage across the bay for the weekend, which consisted of a mum, dad, a 25-ish-year-old sister, and a younger sister who was maybe around 7 or 8. One afternoon, the parents decided to tell my mum that the older sister is actually the younger sister's mother, but they're raising her to believe that they are her biological parents. I can't imagine this stayed secret for much longer, seeing as they'd told my mum after speaking to her for maybe about half an hour. We were visiting my mother's house and sitting down for a family dinner once with my siblings and significant others, about 8 of us in total. My brother, who's significantly younger than I am, was about 14 at the time. There was a silent moment, the kind where you can hear the sound of chewing, and my mother obviously wasn't comfortable with it, so she casually mentioned, "I walked in on him tickling his pickle last week." Chaos ensued. I had a female friend over, and there were about 3 of us sitting around on the couch drinking some beers. Then she drops the, "So, I lost a baby on Sunday" bomb. "Yeah, I didn't even know I was pregnant. Anyone want another beer?" I have an old friend who tends to drop these kinds of bombshells. She's had a hard life and hates to whine about it, but deep down she really needs to talk about these things sometimes. I think it's her way of keeping us updated about her life without feeling like she's a complainer. She's utterly not a complainer, which we tell her as much as possible, but she went through a lot of rough treatment as a kid, and is still dealing with a lot of it. When we were talking about one of my mum's uncles, she casually dropped the fact that he was a serial committer of the unspeakable act, of the worst kind. Jaws were dropped. Hungover at my college's cafeteria, eating breakfast and making obligatory small talk with a girl from Iowa. Somehow, the topic of Crystal, the substance from Breaking Bad, came up. I know, right? What could go wrong with this topic? So I'm saying, yeah, it's a pretty rampant problem. I read a book about it that focused on a city in Iowa, actually. People just boost these big tanks of anhydrous ammonia from farmers. She says, "Oh yeah, my dad used to be a sheriff in Iowa." "Oh, cool." "Yeah, one time he tried to close the lid on a huge anhydrous ammonia tank that was leaking." "Oh, wow." "But he fell in when he was crossing the ladder." "Oh," with about a 5-second pause after that, before, "Is he all right?" "No, the acid ate him to the bone. He's dead." "Oh, well, frick." Another pause, and then I resumed my cereal. Yeah, I mean, what do you even say to continue that conversation? I think there's a much younger version of me that would be fascinated by the state of the body, but now that is not what I want to hear over breakfast. Or at all, really. My gosh. I used to work at a restaurant, and one day during pre-shift, we were casually talking and someone mentions choking someone else as a joking threat. My very hot manager says, "I like to be choked." Realizing what she said, she then stayed in her office for most of the day. I picked up a homeless guy on the interstate on the way back from Kansas City to St. Louis. He seemed really nice and had a lot of words of wisdom. He gave me some interesting insight on women and how to stay positive during the rough times. Later, he asked me if I lived in downtown St. Louis. No, I live in Clayton. I can drop you off around there or somewhere before." He responds, "Just don't drop me off downtown with all the N-words." And then, I swear on my life, he pulled out a big knife and showed me how he would stab an N-word if I dropped him off down there. At the next gas station, he went inside to take a leak, and I pretended to start filling up the car. Once he was out of sight, I popped the trunk, threw out both of his duffel bags on the ground, and peeled out of there. The whole escape probably took less than 8 seconds. One night I was talking to a friend of mine that I've known for years, and he drops the biggest what the frick bomb that I've ever heard. He told me that when he was 16, one morning he woke up and didn't remember anything. And by anything, I mean he wasn't even able to recognize his parents or girlfriend. The most shocking thing is that he never recovered the memory. He actually doesn't remember anything that happened to him before he was 16. I proceeded to talk with him for hours, asking questions like how it was to wake up one day and have a brand new life. It was messed up and extremely interesting as a conversation. He remembered all school notions, but forgot every person, every personal experience, and even how his own city looked like. He had to study a map of the city to get oriented to go around in places. I was at my friend's house on the last day of winter break, helping him pack his college stuff to go back to school. His mum walked through the doorway and looked at the piles of books, computer stuff, among other things, and had this expression of, "What the frick are you doing?" And after this long, awkward stare, she goes, "Oh, I guess no one told you. Your dad lost his job and you're not going back to college this semester." I was once having a drunken patio conversation with some buddies, and we were discussing stupid and annoying things. It was a random conversation about dumb crap, and we were having a laugh until one of my friends busts this out. "Don't you guys hate it when you're taking a crap and it grazes the back of your ball bag?" Everyone else had a long moment of silence. Another friend, after the moment of silence, "Dude, how big is your ball bag?" I recently caught up with someone I knew from my high school days, and we were catching up for dinner. After a few drinks, we get to talking about her husband. And that's when she drops the "what the frick" bomb. "Yeah, it's been hard for him and I, but once he gets out of jail, things will be better." Jail? You never mentioned that. What's he in for?" "Well, remember how I said he cheated on me once? Well, that's why he's in jail." I stared at her. "He got a down-under kiss from a guy with Down syndrome, which is considered illegal in his state, because the guy was not considered mentally an adult." I started mentally planning an escape route. I was hitchhiking and was picked up by a guy who had just caught his adopted 8-year-old son trying on his adopted infant son's diapers. He didn't know what to do or say, so he got in his van and just started driving. He had picked me up simply because he needed to tell someone. I mean, this isn't so bad. Kids do weird stuff. I'm sure the older one was just curious. Doing the deed with some girl out of pity, as she was going through AA. She casually mentions she'd think it were hot if I were to cut off her head and screw it. I really try hard to dismiss this and laugh it off. Then she goes, "No, I'm serious. I've done it with a dead body before. This guy I was riding OD'd on smack, and I just kept going. It was really hot." I was at a Jack in the Box drive-thru, and the man and woman in the car in front of me were yelling at each other quite loudly, so I'd begun to eavesdrop. When he got up front to order, it went something like this: "I need a number 4 combo, a number 3 combo, and a mother-fricking divorce, and a strawberry milkshake." She started yelling, and I started laughing. I swear that if the clerk didn't ask if that dad wanted fries with that, he or she will be kicking themselves on their deathbed for the missed opportunity. I was driving along with my dad when I was about 6, in 1982. We were chatting about civil rights because one of my classmates was the very first black student at my elementary school. My dad was telling me about how the South is very racist, but most of the world isn't like Pennsylvania where he's from. He tells me about his friend in the service in Biloxi, LA, and how they were such good friends, did everything together, even went to ladies of the night together. But in Biloxi, the local lady wouldn't see his friend because he was black, so Dad said, "You're too ignorant even for a working girl," and refused to see her as well. So this whole time I was just sitting listening quietly, being a 6-year-old girl with 2 little blonde braids and a missing tooth. And Dad slowly turns and looks at me, and I said, "A working girl?" And Dad said, "Well, I was in the military, and that's just what you do in the military." On my first day of work at a shoe store, the manager walked around and introduced me to the other employees that came in that day. That was maybe about 2 other people. The last one of the night was an old, short woman named Joanne. As soon as she sees the manager, she walks up to her and tells us that her husband has found her toys and tried to throw them out. My manager says to me, Joanne collects Barbie dolls. And Joanne looks at her and says, "No, my other toys." Giving a coworker and her boyfriend a ride home, and she starts screaming at me to take a different exit off the highway because there's a police car on the off-ramp. Turns out they have a restraining order against each other because he was inappropriate with children, and she kicked the crap out of him for cheating on her. They both ended up in jail shortly after, him for the 13-year-old and her for stabbing him in the leg. Me and a friend were sitting around working on his Mazda when he mentioned that he only did it in the butt with his girlfriend because she had a cyst the size of a baseball in her hoo-ha and it grossed him out. Total non sequitur. I paused a minute and then just eventually said, "Your air cleaner is dirty." As a kid, I was playing along the shore of the Ohio River while visiting Dad's family. I found some neat sticks in the water and started collecting them when my cousin walked up. He was probably about 20 at the time, and he said, "I'm pretty sure those are human bones." Turns out they were. I was playing with a part of a murdered woman's femur. A few years back in college, I was playing Mario Kart Double Dash and drinking beer with a good friend of mine. I said, "Hey, pass me the turtle." He went, "Here you go, man." "Awesome. Take that baby Mario. He then dropped in this gem. Dude, I've got acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Long, shocked silence from me. Yeah. When did you learn about it? A few weeks ago. I've been meaning to tell you for a while now. Wow. I'm not sure what to say. Hey, your hiccups have gone. What? Oh, you motherfricker. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below, and subscribe. My mum said, I want you to go to the shop for me and get this, this, and this. Oh, and by the way, Bluey, our dog, is dead. Don't forget the bread. Cue me bursting into tears. During my first week of the new job, my boss starts telling me and another employee about how he used to date a deaf girl, and that the reason they broke up was that he laughed when she screamed while they were doing the deed. Did you ever wonder if your mom gave your dad a down-under kiss just before she kissed you goodnight? Screw you, Uncle Tony. Screw you. I met this pretty cute girl at the beach a couple of summers ago. We started talking and playing volleyball. Everything seemed normal up until the part where they started describing their life. Yeah, well, my boyfriend is in jail right now for stabbing someone, and that reminds me, you want to see my stab scar? She shows me her stab scar and starts to tell me how she dropped out of school as a complete substance user. You know, I kind of feel lonely without my boyfriend, and he doesn't need to know about anything else. I walked out. I was at a random hookup I met through a buddy. She said, not long after the hookup, so how old are you? My buddy said before I could say anything, he's 27, how old are you? I'm 18, but don't worry, I've done the deed with someone who was 34 before. He's 40 now. It was one of the most awkward moments of my life. It was also the last time I let my buddy hook me up with someone. Good fricking lord. Well, that's enough internet for the narrator for one day. Oh, wait a fricking second. He has to finish recording the second half of this script. Why? The things I do for you weirdos. My friend's girlfriend does this on the daily pretty much. We'll be talking to them about anything at all and she'll interject with, "One time, my mother bit me." Or, "When I was 6, a strange man came in through my window. I hate graveyards because dead people talk to me." It's kind of hard to salvage a conversation once it's taken that turn. I came home from high school one day and my parents told me that they had all of our family pets put down that day. 5 dogs and a cat. None of the animals were sick or hurt, in fact one of them was only 2 years old. We had no problem affording their food and there were no legal issues. They just purely didn't want to take care of 5 85-pound bull mastiffs anymore. And it was my job to pick up their crap, not my parents'. From this experience, I learned that when you cry long enough, your tears become pink from blood caused by the irritation. I told my parents to go F themselves and lived in the basement for over a month. It was furnished. My mum left food for me at the top of the stairs, and somewhat unrelated, this is when I also taught myself how to code in assembly because I needed a distraction. A few months later, we went to a breeder and bought a West Highland White Terrier. He was a good dog, but I was always slightly concerned that they would randomly kill him too. My folks soon got divorced, and when they did, they didn't ask me who I wanted to live with, and didn't fight for custody of me, but they did fight like that couple on the War of the Roses over that fricking dog. So, at age 17, I moved out of the house. I had a job. I moved into my own apartment in a crappy neighborhood. To this day, I still don't forgive nor understand my parents, even though they passed away a long time ago. I was studying in the Dominican Republic and living in a very rural area. I passed my days sitting around talking to whoever. One day, I was in a town I frequented, and this guy I hadn't seen before starts talking to me. Within 5 minutes, he tells me this, totally straight-faced. "When I was little, I had a goat, and I used to play with the goat. But then I got too old, so I stopped playing with him. One day, I was sitting like this, and he had his knees apart, and the goat got mad that I wouldn't play with him. He charged, hit me between the legs, and took out my family jewels. Now I have none." I sat there, in shock, hoping that my Spanish was poor enough that I misunderstood. Sadly, an hour later, I hear the same story from his aunt, who's giggling while telling the story with the poor guy sitting right there. Not a conversation I was directly involved in, but there's still a high degree of what the frick. I was talking with some friends the other day, and one of them mentioned that while she was at work, her friends there brought up the topic of deepest, darkest secrets, One immediately volunteered the information that every time she goes to the bathroom, she sniffs her undies. Apparently, everyone just gaped awkwardly and the conversation quickly shifted to other topics. Seriously, if a topic like that ever comes up, don't be the first one to share. A girl I met for a blind date, which was already a disaster on so many levels, casually dropped this nugget as I was hurriedly bringing her home. Yeah, so this one time a girl told people that my friend got her pregnant, and it was a lie. It ruined the kid's life. So the next time I saw her, I shivved her in the neck. Huh. I accelerated the car slightly faster. My dad left me on the freeway once for several hours, and now that I'm grown up, he steals my money and blames me for everything that goes wrong. Yeah, that was about the third or fourth conversation I'd had with that guy. Way to drop dramatic family conversations into a conversation about cinnamon buns, my man. I was catching up with one of my ex-girlfriends who I hadn't seen in years. We parted on good terms, so it was just friends catching up. She was kind of weird in a monkey cheese ninjas pirates kind of way when I knew her, so this came as something of a shock. She went blah blah blah, and then I had my kids, but that was after I lost my leg. What, you lost a leg? Yeah, we got in a shootout with some white supremacist group and I got hit in the leg. I didn't want to go to the hospital because the last doctor I saw was an N-word, and I think he's the reason I lost my eye. So I put it off and it finally got really infected, and then those dirty Indian doctors cut it off. Fricking dotheads. Okay, and who was we again? Oh, and she names some other white supremacist group. You know, I can get you in if you want. The racial cleansing is coming, and I'd hate for you to be on the wrong side of the race war. You're smart enough to be an officer, and we need someone good at planning, because the N-words… I just said, ah. So that's how I found out my ex-girlfriend was a one-legged, one-eyed white supremacist that gets into shootouts. Well, call me mindlessly optimistic, but the narrator is mostly just glad that by the sound of that story, most of those awful humans were too busy killing other white supremacists to devote much of their time to anything else. I was young and thought Red Lobster was an awesome restaurant. I had a bit of extra money just then, which was rare, so I asked this girl out. She was young, hot, in her early 20s or late teens, smoking body. We're sitting in the waiting area for our tables to be ready when this couple comes in with a toddler in a stroller. She smiles at the little boy and he smiles back at her. That's when she says, "Oh, he's so cute. He looks just like my 2-year-old. I'm rolling with this. Okay, she has a kid that she didn't mention. We'd talked a couple of times before, but never dated. So that's cool, I'm thinking. I can deal with this. Then she drops the bomb. Turning to me, she says, "By the way, did I mention I have 5 kids? No. No, that didn't come up." "Oh, I've got a couple for you. I was working at a grocery store. I was at the customer service desk. My boss was there. She was about 25-ish, maybe 20. We're talking about partying. I told her I like drinking bourbon to get real messed up. She tells me that, oh my god, she got so wasted off Jack one night, she was at a party and was basically blacking out, and she figures she gave just about every guy at the party a down-under kiss. What? I didn't know what to do. Did I hear that correctly? Holy crap. A couple of months later, I got the world's crappiest kiss of the same sort from the same girl. Practice demonstrably does not equal perfect. Even the handy was like some kind of sword-in-the-stone misadventure. Just terrible. Another time I was talking to my roommate, an English guy. I was explaining the concept behind Toots and the Maytals' 54-46 song. He was a real kind English guy, and as I'm talking, he just sticks his finger into his nose, then that same finger into his mouth, and he sucks the frickin' thing dry better than my boss ever did. Both so different, both so similar, both so surreal. "A guy once paid $300 to take a tinkle on me in some alley," said a late 30-something employee of mine. I may as well throw in one more. From the same office, I made the mistake of dating one of the female junior staffers. Our chain of command was entirely separate, so it should have been okay, but such things never work out as planned. Anywho, after flirting a bit at a bar, she asks me if she can spend the night at my place. She's 21, 98 pounds, and cute, so I consent. Get back, start making out. This is the first time we've ever made out, and 10 minutes or so in, she says, "I was a victim of the unspeakable act." What? I pull away. "No, don't pull away. That's the worst thing you can do. I'm just telling you, it happened to me." Thus began a 2.5-month relationship from hell. I was at a bachelor party talking to one of the exotic dancers. She says, Sure, I'll do the deed with the groom and even the best man, but after 3 or 4 guys, it gets kinda gross, you know? Her and I were on a first date, and upon her seeing a couple with a baby, she said, I really want a baby. After you get married? No, I mean now. I don't need a husband, I just want a baby. The same girl, later that night, after being around some of my friends, told me that I must not like her because I was too nice to her around them. That if I really liked her, I would have put her down and made fun of her in front of them. There were a few too many issues going on there for me. Visiting my dad in Florida, he says to me, I think the internet will be slow for the next hour. I'm downloading a naughty movie. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.